The snow outside the Park Avenue penthouse drifted like silent feathers, soft and peaceful, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside. Inside the marble foyer, where a Mont Blanc pen still lay open beside Preston Lockwood's latest investment contract, a scream shattered the quiet. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, choked, and filled with the kind of terror only a trapped woman could make. Lillian Hayes stumbled backward, her hand clutching her belly as she tried to shield the child growing inside her. But Preston was faster. He always was. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist, twisting it until she cried out again. He wasn't drunk. That would have been easier. No, Preston was perfectly sober, perfectly aware, and perfectly cruel. His anger tonight wasn't about her. It was about the folder she had found. A folder she never should have opened. The contract details of a shell company, offshore accounts, a transfer to a woman named Marissa Vance, a name Lillian didn't recognize, but one Preston clearly feared. She only asked one question: who is she? But that was enough to unleash the monster. He shoved her so hard she hit the edge of the marble counter. Pain exploded across her ribs, her vision blurred. She gasped, "Please, the baby." That was the mistake. Preston hated when she reminded him of anything he couldn't control. His voice, low and poisonous, slipped through clenched teeth. That child ruined everything. Then his hand rose again. The second blow took her breath away. The third stole her balance. The fourth she didn't even feel. Her world tilted, spinning, fading. She collapsed onto the cold marble floor, her cheek pressed to the stone, her breath shallow. She heard Preston pacing, muttering curses, arranging the scene to look like an accident, just like he had threatened months ago whenever she talked back. She heard a door slam. Silence followed. Her fingers twitched weakly, reaching toward the phone he had thrown across the room. But before she could move again, darkness swept her under. Her last conscious thought wasn't fear. It was heartbreak. She wondered if anyone would know what truly happened. She wondered if her brothers Ethan and Noah would ever forgive her for disappearing from their lives. She wondered if they would ever come. Across town, in a cramped Bronx apartment, Noah Hayes stared at his laptop screen as a notification flashed. A motion alert from a hidden system he had installed years ago. A system Preston never discovered. Something inside him froze. He opened the file. The video loaded. His breath stopped. It was Lillian. And she wasn't moving. Noah's scream ripped from his throat as he grabbed his coat and keys, tears blurring his vision. Ethan, sitting across the room, looked up sharply. One look at Noah's face was enough. He grabbed his boots, ready to follow his brother into whatever nightmare awaited them. They didn't know what they would find. They didn't know if they were already too late. They didn't know that the man who hurt their sister was about to face a reckoning he could never escape. What they did know, what burned inside, both of them, was one certainty that would change everything. Their sister was fighting for her life, and someone was going to pay for it. And that someone was Preston Lockwood. But neither of them knew that Preston wasn't done yet. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the dim hospital room, a cold reminder that the life Lillian Hayes once knew had slipped away the moment she hit the marble floor of the penthouse. Machines beeped steadily beside her, each sound a fragile promise that she was still here, still fighting. Her face was pale beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, her long brown hair matted from dried blood that no nurse had dared to wash out until the police finished their first report. The bruises on her arms looked like fingerprints carved into her skin. A deep purple blossom spread across her cheekbone, the imprint of Preston's ring still faintly visible. She lay still, her breath shallow, her hands limp at her sides. Only her unborn child made the slightest movement, a soft shift beneath the hospital sheet, as if sensing the danger their mother had barely survived. Nurse Callahan, a woman with silver-streaked hair and years of experience hiding her emotions, stood at the foot of the bed, watching Lillian with a sorrow she couldn't disguise. She whispered to another nurse, "Someone did this to her. No way she fell." They both glanced toward the door where a police officer scribbled notes. The nurse's words floated into the room, soft but piercing. "I've seen a lot of things, but this was personal." Outside the glass window, Ethan and Noah Hayes stood like statues. Ethan, taller and broader, kept his jaw clenched so tightly the muscles twitched. Noah's hands shook as he held a styrofoam cup of untouched coffee, his eyes red and swollen. The video replayed in his head in a loop. He couldn't shut off his sister, shrinking under Preston's blows, collapsing before Noah could even shout her name. Ethan spoke first, his voice low, almost hollow. I knew something was wrong when she stopped calling. Noah swallowed hard, guilt twisting inside him. We should have tried harder. We should have gone looking. His voice cracked, and he pressed his forehead to the glass. She needed us. Inside the room, a soft groan slipped from Lillian's lips. It was barely audible, but it hit both brothers like a thunderclap. They rushed in, the officer stepping aside as if sensing this moment belonged to the family. Ethan grabbed her hand gently. Lil, it's us. We're here. You're safe now. She didn't open her eyes, but a tear rolled down her cheek. Noah caught it with his thumb. We're not leaving you again, he whispered, his voice trembling. Not ever. What they didn't know was that even unconscious, Lillian was drifting through memories she wished she could escape. She saw the penthouse, the glittering chandelier, the drawer she opened, the one containing the documents Preston would kill to protect. She remembered the sound of his footsteps behind her. She remembered falling. A spark of fear flickered across her face, her fingers curling weakly into the blanket. Noah leaned closer. She's scared, he murmured. Ethan nodded. She knows he's not finished. Outside the room, a tall man in a charcoal suit strode toward the nurse's station. His eyes were dark, calculating, and familiar in the worst possible way. Preston Lockwood had arrived. He signed in calmly, adjusting his Rolex as if visiting a routine business meeting. His cold voice echoed through the corridor. I'm here to see my wife. Ethan froze. Noah stopped breathing, because the monster who nearly killed her had come back to finish what he started. The hallway outside Lillian's room seemed to shrink as Preston Lockwood approached, every step echoing like a threat. The nurses stiffened, exchanging uneasy glances. They recognized him not because he was famous, but because the coldness in his eyes carried a quiet warning. Stay out of his way. Wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a black coat draped over his arm, and a watch worth more than most people's cars, he looked every bit the successful millionaire the world admired. But Ethan and Noah knew better. They saw the predator beneath the polish. Preston stopped just outside the door, scanning the room through the glass. His expression didn't change when he saw his wife lying unconscious, hooked up to machines. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he smoothed the cuff of his shirt and adjusted his tie, as if preparing for a business negotiation. Move, he said coldly. Noah stepped forward first, blocking the doorway. You're not going in there. Preston arched an eyebrow. I wasn't asking permission. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. Ethan positioned himself beside Noah, his stance solid, unmovable. The police are still investigating, Ethan said. You shouldn't be anywhere near her. Preston gave a soft, mocking laugh. Investigating what? A clumsy pregnant woman who doesn't watch her step? The officer nearby stiffened, turning toward them, but Preston held up a hand. Officer, surely you understand. That is my wife. I am legally entitled to see her. The officer hesitated. It was true, Preston still had rights he didn't deserve. Noah's jaw clenched as he stepped closer, lowering his voice. You touch her again, and I swear, Preston cut him off, leaning forward so only Noah and Ethan could hear. You think you know the truth. You don't know anything. His calmness was more terrifying than rage, and if you two had stayed out of her life like she wanted, none of this would have happened. Ethan's fist tightened until the knuckles went white, but he didn't swing. Not yet, not with Lillian fighting for her life just feet away. A doctor approached from down the hall, holding a clipboard. Mr. Lockwood, she said carefully, your wife is in critical condition. Her body suffered significant trauma. Preston didn't blink. Will she survive? He asked flatly. Ethan stared at him, shocked by the absence of emotion. The doctor took a breath. We hope so. But the next 24 hours are unpredictable. Her baby is stressed but stable. For the first time, something flickered in Preston's eyes, not fear, but calculation. If she wakes up, he said slowly, I need to be informed immediately. Ethan took a step toward him. Why? So you can shut her up before she talks? Preston turned his head, giving Ethan a chilling smile. You're emotional. Understandable. But be careful. People who make accusations without evidence tend to look guilty themselves. Before Ethan could react, Noah's phone buzzed. A new notification. He glanced down and felt his stomach drop. Ethan. His voice shook. You need to see this. Ethan leaned over Noah's shoulder, reading the message that made his blood run cold. A digital alert from the hidden system Noah once installed. A second video, from a different angle. A camera neither Preston nor even Noah knew was still active. It showed everything. Not just the attack, but what Preston did after. Noah whispered, "We can't let him know we have this." But Preston was watching them carefully. Too carefully. And then he smiled slow, knowing. Dangerous. As if he already suspected the truth. Because Preston Lockwood wasn't afraid of being exposed. He was afraid of something much worse. The tension in the hallway tightened like a rope around everyone's throat. Preston Lockwood didn't move toward the room, yet he simply stood there, hands in his pockets, expression smooth as glass, watching Ethan and Noah with a sharpened interest. He knew they were hiding something. He could smell fear the way a wolf smells blood. From behind the nurse's station, whispers rippled. A man who looked that polished, that calm, shouldn't be standing this close to a wife who lay broken in a hospital bed. But Preston thrived in chaos others couldn't understand. He adjusted his cufflinks, tiny platinum bars engraved with his initials, and stepped closer. "Let's talk," Preston said quietly. "Outside." Ethan shook his head. "Not happening." Preston's lips twitched. "Do you think you're protecting her?" Noah glared. "We know what you did." Preston tilted his head, as if amused. "If you knew, you'd be smarter." Ethan's fists tightened again. He couldn't understand how someone could be this cold, this unbothered, after nearly killing his pregnant wife. But Preston wasn't thinking about guilt. He was thinking about control. He leaned in, lowering his voice so only the brothers could hear. "You boys should remember something important. Lillian married me, not you. That means her safety, her decisions, even her medical care." He paused, savoring the moment. "Are legally in my hands." Noah's stomach dropped. "You wouldn't dare." Preston shrugged. "You don't know what I dare." The officer took a wary step forward. "Sir, maybe you should." Preston cut him off with a raised hand. "Officer, I'd like you to escort these two out. They're upsetting my wife's care." The officer hesitated, but the law was the law. Without evidence, Ethan and Noah had no authority here. The system always favored men like Preston, wealthy, connected, manipulative, and he knew it. Noah whispered urgently to Ethan, "If we get kicked out, we lose everything. Stall him." Ethan stepped forward again. "Her doctor said she needs calm. Maybe you should leave." Preston's smile faded, just slightly. It was the first crack in his mask. "You have exactly 10 seconds, he murmured, "before I make a call that removes both of you permanently." Noah's phone buzzed again. Another alert, another video fragment. He glanced at it quickly, and his heart stopped. This angle wasn't from the penthouse cameras. This came from Preston's office on 5th Avenue. And what it showed made Noah's blood roar in his ears. Preston with a woman, Marissa Vance, arguing heatedly, money exchanged, threats, documents, a hidden connection to the offshore accounts, evidence of crimes that could bury Preston alive. And then, the part that made Noah go cold, Preston saying the words, "If Lillian ever talks, we both go down. Handle it." Not only did Preston beat her, he had planned the entire attack. Noah's voice cracked. "Ethan, this is worse than we thought." Ethan leaned in to see the screen, and his face drained of color. It wasn't just violence. It wasn't just rage. It was conspiracy. It was premeditated. It was criminal. But before Ethan could speak, a shadow fell across them. Preston was looking directly at Noah's phone. For the first time, true danger flickered in his eyes. "What?" Preston asked slowly. "Did you just see?" The hallway fell silent. Noah locked the phone and shoved it into his pocket. "Nothing you need to worry about." But Preston's expression changed, cold calculation turning into something darker, sharper. "And here I thought tonight couldn't get any more interesting," he whispered. Then he stepped back, his smile returning, but this one held a promise. A deadly one. Because Preston had just realized something. If they had evidence, he would have to eliminate them too. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, as if reacting to the sudden shift in the air. Preston Lockwood's smile grew sharper, more poisonous, the kind that let you know he wasn't simply dangerous, he was entertained. And there was nothing more terrifying than a man who enjoyed the fear he caused. Ethan stepped in front of Noah instinctively, shielding him as Preston took one slow step forward. The officer watched cautiously, uncertain whether he was witnessing a domestic dispute or the beginning of something far more sinister. Preston clasped his hands behind his back, posture relaxed but eyes glinting. "You two seem nervous," he said smoothly. "Almost like you saw something you shouldn't have." Noah felt the blood drain from his face, but he forced himself to remain still. Ethan, however, wasn't built for stillness. "You don't get to talk to us," he growled. "Not after what you did." Preston tilted his head as though amused by the accusation. "What I did?" He raised an eyebrow. "You mean trying to keep my wife safe? You boys never understood boundaries. You left her years ago. I kept her, fed her, protected her." "Protected?" Noah snapped. "She's lying unconscious because of you." Preston's jaw twitched, but his voice remained controlled. "Accidents happen, Noah. Pregnant women trip. They lose balance. Hormones make them emotional. You'd be amazed how quickly things spiral when they're not thinking clearly." It was the kind of lie polished men like him had rehearsed all their lives. The kind that convinced police, judges, and entire courts. The kind that destroyed women. The doctor returned at that moment, unaware she was stepping into a tightening trap. "Mr. Lockwood," she said softly, "if you want to see your wife, it will have to be brief. We're preparing her for additional scans." Ethan's pulse spiked. Preston couldn't be allowed inside that room, not while Lillian was vulnerable, unable to speak, unable to defend herself. "He shouldn't be near her," Ethan said quickly. "He's the reason she's here." Preston turned slowly, giving Ethan a chilling stare. "Careful," he murmured. "Defamation is an expensive hobby." The doctor hesitated, glancing between them. "Is there something I need to know?" It was the moment Ethan had been waiting for, a tiny opening, a crack in the facade. "Yes," he began, but he didn't get another word out. Because Preston moved faster than anyone expected. He stepped forward, gripping the doctor's arm with just enough force to startle her. "Doctor," he said coolly, "ignore them. They're upset and trying to stir trouble. If you listen to them, you'll interfere with my wife's care." His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "And I have no problem filing a complaint if this hospital mishandles my family." For a moment, the doctor froze. This wasn't a threat she could dismiss. Hospitals depended on wealthy donors, and Preston had the kind of influence that could end careers. Ethan saw the hesitation and felt something inside him snap. He stepped forward, grabbing Preston's wrist and yanking him back. "Don't touch her." The hallway erupted into chaos. The officer jumped forward, separating them. Nurses gasped. A tray crashed somewhere down the hall. Preston shook Ethan's grip off violently, and in that instant, his polished mask cracked wide open. "You want to fight?" he hissed. "You came to the right man." Noah instinctively pulled out his phone, ready to show the officer the first video if things escalated. But before he could unlock it, Preston leaned close, his voice low enough for only the brothers to hear. "You think a video scares me?" he whispered. "You don't know the people I work with. If you come after me, you won't just lose this battle, you'll disappear." Noah's throat tightened. "But Ethan?" Ethan stepped even closer. "Try it," he said softly. "See what happens." For a brief, electric second, no one breathed. Then a sound broke the tension. A nurse running toward them from Lillian's room, panic in her eyes. "Her heart rate just dropped," she shouted. "She's crashing." All eyes whipped toward the door. And the nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. The moment the nurse shouted that Lillian was crashing, the entire hallway erupted into frantic motion. Nurses rushed into the room, pushing carts, adjusting wires, calling out medical orders with practiced intensity. The steady beeping of the heart monitor turned erratic, sharp, and terrifying. Ethan and Noah stood frozen for a moment, their world collapsing in real time. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Noah felt his knees weaken. Inside the room, Lillian's body trembled slightly as nurses worked over her, but she didn't wake. She didn't move. She was slipping away. Ethan tried to step inside, but a nurse blocked him. "Please stay outside. We need space." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of urgency. Noah grabbed the doorframe, gripping it so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Lil, please hold on," he whispered to himself, fighting the rising panic in his chest. "You can't leave us. Not like this." His voice broke, the weight of guilt pressing down so hard he could barely breathe. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were too late. They hadn't protected her in time. Ethan paced back and forth, raking a hand through his hair. His military training had taught him how to face danger, but not how to stand helpless while the person he loved most fought for her life. Then, like poison in the air, Preston spoke. "Well," he said quietly, "maybe this is for the best." Both brothers snapped toward him. Ethan stepped forward so fast he nearly slipped on the polished floor. "What did you just say?" Preston shrugged, unbothered. "She's always been fragile, weak. If she can't handle the stress of childbirth, that's not my fault." Noah's rage flared so intensely he felt dizzy. "You did this to her." Preston leaned against the wall casually. "Prove it." The officer shot him a warning glare, but Preston didn't care. He enjoyed watching them unravel. It fed something dark inside him. Inside the room, a loud alarm blared. The doctor shouted for more epinephrine. Someone began chest compressions. The sound of gloved hands hitting Lillian's chest echoed through the hallway like gunshots. Noah covered his face with both hands. Ethan's body shook as he braced himself against the wall. The nurse yelled, "We're losing her." That sentence punched through both men like a blade. Something inside Noah snapped. He turned on Preston, voice shaking with rage. "If she dies, I swear." Preston raised an eyebrow. "You'll what? Hurt me?" he smirked. "Big mistake. I'm not the one you should worry about." Ethan stepped in front of Noah before he lunged. "He wants you to react," Ethan hissed. "Don't give him what he wants." Noah's eyes filled with tears. "He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air she does." Inside, the machines suddenly fell silent. The stillness was louder than the alarms had been. Every muscle in Ethan's body locked. Noah stopped breathing. The doctor looked at the monitor, then at Lillian's still body. For a moment, neither brother could bear to look. Ethan's world tilted. Noah felt the floor drop beneath him. Then, another sound. A faint, fragile flutter on the monitor. "She's stabilizing," the nurse cried. Noah collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands as sobs tore out of him. Ethan let out a shaky breath, gripping the wall so hard his fingers ached. Relief washed over them, but it was thin, fragile, temporary. Lillian was alive, but barely. One wrong movement, one stress, one shock could end everything. Preston watched all of it with unreadable eyes. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "She wasn't supposed to survive." Ethan's blood ran cold. Noah looked up sharply. "What did you say?" Ethan snarled. Preston smiled slowly. But before he could speak again, the doctor stepped out of the room, her face pale. "I need to talk to all of you," she said. "No," she added gravely, "I need to talk to you right now." Because Lillian's condition wasn't the only crisis. There was something wrong with the baby. The doctor motioned for them to follow her into a small consultation room across the hall. Ethan and Noah moved quickly, fear gripping them tightly. Preston followed too, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. When the door shut behind them, the hum of hospital machines faded, replaced by a suffocating silence. Dr. Marshall, a seasoned obstetric specialist with years of high-risk cases behind her, took a steady breath before speaking. "Lillian is holding on," she said gently, "but her body has undergone significant trauma. And the baby—" She hesitated. Ethan leaned forward. "Tell us straight, please." The doctor nodded. "The baby is showing signs of acute fetal distress. His heart rate dropped during the episode, and although it has stabilized, it's still weaker than it should be." Noah swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "Can he survive?" Her eyes softened. "There is a chance, but we need to monitor closely. Any additional stress could be dangerous." Ethan felt the weight of those words crush his chest. The child wasn't even born and already fighting for his life. Dr. Marshall glanced between them before continuing. "There's something else," she lowered her voice. "During the exam, we discovered older bruising on Lillian's abdomen. Not from today. Weeks old." Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath him. Noah gripped the arm of his chair, knuckles pale. The doctor looked toward Preston, her expression shifting into suspicion. "Mr. Lockwood," she asked carefully, "has your wife had any previous falls or injuries?" Preston didn't blink. "Pregnancy, clumsiness. She bumped into a countertop weeks ago." The doctor's look darkened. This didn't come from bumping into a countertop. Noah snapped. Because he did it, that's why. Preston ignored him. Doctor, he said coolly, unless you have proof, I suggest you refrain from accusations. Dr. Marshall folded her arms. I don't need proof to be concerned. What I saw was not an accident. Someone harmed her intentionally. Ethan stood so abruptly, his chair scraped the floor. We have proof. Preston's eyes flicked sharply toward him. Do you? He asked, voice smooth but laced with warning. Noah hesitated. They couldn't show the videos yet. Not with Preston watching their every move, not without ensuring they were protected. Sensing their silence, Preston smirked. That's what I thought. But before he could say another word, Dr. Marshall spoke again, this time with something heavier in her tone. There's more. Something you all need to know. She opened a file, glancing at the charts inside. Lillian was scheduled for a prenatal blood panel 2 days ago. It came through our system late this afternoon. She took a breath. The baby's genetic markers don't match Mr. Lockwood. The room froze. Ethan blinked, unsure he heard correctly. Noah's mouth fell open. Preston's entire posture changed, not with shock, but with a sudden murderous stillness. Dr. Marshall continued quietly. Sir, scientifically, you are not the father. Noah whispered, stunned. Lil had someone else? But he knew his sister. She was loyal to a fault. The slightest idea of betrayal didn't fit her. The doctor turned a page. There is no evidence of infidelity. This is something else, something medical. She pointed at a notation. The markers suggest the conception occurred at a time inconsistent with Mr. Lockwood's travel logs. Ethan's eyes widened. Travel logs? Then the realization hit him like a punch. He wasn't home during that period. Noah stared in horror. Then how? The doctor answered softly. That's why I'm concerned. This could indicate coercion or forced contact. Ethan felt rage boil up so fast he nearly choked. Noah's hands shook violently. Preston didn't move. He simply inhaled, then exhaled slowly, and smiled. A cold, dead smile. Doctor, he said quietly, you should be careful what you imply. But his eyes revealed everything. He knew exactly what happened. He knew what he did. And he thought he would get away with it. Ethan took a step toward him, voice low and shaking with fury. You're a monster. Preston leaned in, whispering, you have no idea. Then he straightened his tie. Because there was one thing no one in the room knew yet. Preston had already set a plan in motion. A plan meant to erase Lillian permanently. The night outside the hospital deepened into a heavy winter silence, the kind that carried both dread and possibility. Inside Lillian's room, the machines hummed steadily again, their rhythm fragile but holding. Ethan and Noah sat on opposite sides of her bed, exhaustion carved into their faces. They had been awake for hours, barely speaking, listening to every shift in her breathing. Preston had left temporarily after being asked by the officer to allow the medical team space. But both brothers knew he wasn't gone for good. Men like Preston didn't leave. They regrouped. A soft sound broke the stillness. A faint inhalation, a tiny stir of movement. Noah sat up. Ethan, did you hear that? Ethan leaned forward quickly. Lil? Her eyelids fluttered weakly, then again. A nurse entered at the perfect moment, eyes widening. She's responding. Lillian struggled against the fog in her mind, her bruised face tightening. Her lips parted, barely forming a sound. Ethan moved closer, his voice low and soothing. Lil, it's us. Ethan and Noah. We're right here. Her eyes opened just a sliver. But it was enough. She saw them. She knew them. A tear ran down her cheek. Her throat worked painfully until a single whisper slipped out. The baby. Noah was beside her immediately. He's okay. He's fighting. Just like you. Another tear fell, this one heavier, as if carrying days, months of fear. She tried to lift her hand, but the movement was too much. Ethan gently held it for her. We're not leaving you again, he whispered. Not ever. Then her expression shifted. Fear. A deep, instinctive fear. She turned her head slightly toward the door. He knows, she breathed. Her voice trembled. He said, it wasn't supposed to happen. Her words broke off, overtaken by pain, but they were enough to send Ethan and Noah into a freezing stillness. Noah's heartbeat thundered in his ears. She remembered him. She remembered the attack. She remembered the threat. And she was terrified he would come back. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. He's not touching you again, I promise. But Lillian moved her head weakly, disagreeing. He has. People. Money, he said. I was a problem he needed to fix. Noah felt a chill crawl up his spine. Did he threaten you before this? Her eyes closed briefly, as if the memory itself hurt more than her injuries. He said, if I talked, if I told anyone what I found. Her breath hitched. He'd make sure no one believed me. Ethan leaned closer. What did you find? Her voice came out thin, trembling. Files. Money going somewhere? Women? Names I didn't know? Noah and Ethan exchanged a look. This wasn't just abuse. This was something bigger, something dangerous. Lillian continued, tears slipping down her bruised face. And the baby, he said. She couldn't finish. Noah placed a gentle hand on her arm. It doesn't matter what he said. He doesn't decide anything anymore. But Lillian looked at him with a sudden urgency. You don't understand. The baby isn't. She gasped as pain rippled through her abdomen. The nurse rushed forward. Easy, sweetheart. Don't strain yourself. Lillian closed her eyes, fighting to stay conscious. Ethan leaned closer. Lil, it's okay. Say it when you're ready. She shook her head weakly. No, you need to know. Then, footsteps approached. Heavy. Controlled. The door creaked. Preston stood there. Perfect suit, calm expression, cold eyes. And he smiled. Look who finally woke up. Lillian's entire body tensed in terror. Ethan stood instantly, Noah beside him. But Preston wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Lillian, and with a soft, chilling voice, he said, We need to finish our conversation, sweetheart. Preston Lockwood stepped fully into the room, the soft click of the door closing behind him sounding more like a lock snapping shut. Lillian's breath hitched, her fingers tightened weakly around the bedsheet. The heart monitor quickened, its beeps rising just enough to betray her fear. Ethan and Noah moved instinctively, bodies forming a wall between their sister and the man who nearly ended her life. Preston didn't even acknowledge them. His eyes stayed on Lillian, studying her, reading her, calculating her. You look better than I expected, he said casually, as if greeting her after a business trip rather than after an assault. Lillian's lips trembled, her voice barely emerged. Stay away. Preston tilted his head slightly. We both know that's not possible. Ethan stepped forward. You need to leave. Now. Preston's cold gaze shifted to him for the first time. Or what? You'll hit me? Cause a scene? Give the hospital a reason to remove you? Noah took a step closer, voice low and shaking. If you come near her, I swear, Preston cut him off with a quiet laugh. Swear all you want. You think threats from two broke nobodies mean anything to me? He walked a few steps closer. Ethan blocked him instantly. The tension in the room thickened to the point of suffocation. Preston leaned in just enough so they all heard him clearly. You boys walked away from her years ago. You don't get to pretend you're heroes now. Noah felt the words like a knife to the chest. Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing himself not to react. Because Preston's goal wasn't to argue, it was to destabilize them, break them emotionally, make them lose control so he could paint himself as the victim. Lillian forced her eyes open again, mustering what strength she could. Ethan, Noah. She whispered weakly, don't let him. Preston stepped back just slightly, looking at her the way a man evaluates a piece of property. You always were dramatic, he said softly. But don't worry, once you sign the statements I brought, all of this will be over. Ethan's eyes widened. Statements? Preston slid a folded set of documents from his coat. An accident report. You'll state you fell, that your brothers are overreacting, that no one harmed you. Lillian's breath seized in her chest. Preston continued calmly. If you sign, I'll take care of your medical bills. The baby's care. Everything will be handled. Noah's rage erupted. You're trying to force her to protect you? Preston turned his head slightly. I'm offering her a way to survive. Ethan took a step forward. You hurt her. You hurt the baby. And you think we're going to let you walk out of here? Preston's eyes narrowed. You don't have a choice. But then something unexpected happened. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Tall, confident, wearing a white doctor's coat, Dr. Marshall stepped in, followed by the officer. Her expression was sharp, controlled, and utterly done with Preston's arrogance. "Mr. Lockwood," she said firmly, "you were told to stay away from the patient. You are violating hospital policy." Preston straightened. "I'm her husband," Dr. Marshall's voice hardened. "Not for long, I suspect." The officer stepped beside her. "Sir, you need to leave the room." Immediately, Preston's mask cracked, just for a moment. "This is harassment." Dr. Marshall folded her arms. "No, this is a medical directive, and if you refuse, I will have security escort you off the property." Preston's eyes darkened. But then something else happened. The officer's radio crackled. "Dispatch, we have a request. Bring Mr. Lockwood to the lobby. Someone is here to see him." Preston's brows furrowed. "Who?" The officer listened again. His expression shifted. "A federal agent." Ethan and Noah froze. Preston's face blanched for the first time that night. The officer gestured. "Mr. Lockwood, you need to come with me." Preston inhaled sharply, regaining whatever composure he could. "This isn't over," he whispered. He shot one last look at Lillian. Then he stepped out of the room. But none of them knew. The person waiting in the lobby wasn't just a federal agent. It was someone who knew Preston's darkest secret. Preston Lockwood followed the officer down the hallway with a stiffness he tried to disguise. He kept his chin raised, suit pristine, steps controlled. But something was wrong. The tension in his expression wasn't arrogance anymore, it was uncertainty, the first crack in a man who had always believed the world revolved around him. Ethan and Noah watched him go from inside Lillian's room, standing guard like sentinels. Lillian lay still but awake now, eyes heavy with exhaustion and fear. She whispered, "Who is waiting for him?" Noah shook his head. "We don't know, but it's someone big." Ethan nodded. Someone he didn't expect. Downstairs, the hospital lobby glowed under soft yellow lights. Late-night visitors sat slumped in chairs, nurses passed by with clipboards, and the snow outside framed the glass doors like a silent curtain. Preston scanned the lobby with annoyance until he saw her. Standing near the reception desk was a woman in a navy coat, her hair pulled back, a badge clipped to her belt. She looked young but carried the kind of quiet authority that came from years of knowing too many truths. Her eyes locked onto Preston with a calm intensity. "Mr. Lockwood," she said. "Special Agent Claire Donovan, FBI." Preston stiffened. "FBI? This is absurd. I haven't committed any federal crime." Agent Donovan raised a brow. "Interesting. Who said anything about crimes?" Preston faltered. For the first time, he didn't have a perfectly crafted response. She pulled a folder from under her arm. "We received an anonymous tip about financial irregularities linked to your investment firm." Preston blinked once, carefully. Then his charm snapped back into place. "Anonymous tips are unreliable. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding." But Agent Donovan didn't blink. "I didn't say we acted on the tip alone." She opened the folder, and Preston's face drained of color. Inside were printed screenshots, email logs, offshore transfers, encrypted transactions. Noah's videos weren't in this file, but something equally devastating was. Preston whispered, "Where did you get these?" Agent Donovan gave a cool smile. "It's amazing what surfaces when someone you've wronged decides to stop being afraid." His mind raced. Who would dare? Then he saw her, standing just behind Agent Donovan. Marissa Vance. The woman he thought he controlled. The woman he paid off. The woman he threatened. She looked different now, no longer the polished assistant with flawless makeup and heels. She looked exhausted, afraid, but also resolute. "Hello, Preston," she said quietly. He took a step back. "You." Marissa swallowed hard. "I told you I couldn't do this anymore. You said if I talked, you'd ruin me. You said no one would believe me." Her voice cracked. "But they do believe me. They saw everything." Agent Donovan nodded. "Miss Vance provided substantial evidence of your involvement in multiple federal offenses: fraud, coercion, witness intimidation." She stepped forward. "We're not arresting you tonight, but we are issuing a formal notice." She handed him a document. "You are under federal investigation." Preston's hand trembled. He tried to hide it. He failed. Marissa looked down, voice trembling. "Lillian didn't deserve what you did to her." Preston's jaw clenched. "She betrayed me." Marissa shook her head. She found proof. Proof of what you made me help you do. Agent Donovan closed the folder. You should know one more thing, Mr. Lockwood. Preston looked at her sharply. She met his gaze without blinking. You are barred from approaching your wife until further notice. If you come near her, we will treat it as obstruction and intimidation. There. The first real blow. And it landed hard. Preston's fingers curled into fists as he exhaled through his teeth. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Agent Donovan didn't flinch. Actually, Mr. Lockwood, I think we're just beginning to understand. Upstairs, in her quiet hospital room, Lillian sensed something had shifted. She didn't know how, but she felt it. She whispered to her brothers, "Something changed, didn't it?" Ethan nodded. Noah stared at the hallway, as if waiting for fate to walk in. Then he turned to Lillian with a soft, fierce certainty. "This time, Lil, you're not the one who's going to break." Because the world was finally, for the first time, turning against Preston Lockwood, and his downfall had only just begun. The silence in Lillian's room felt heavier after Preston's confrontation with the FBI. Snow continued falling outside the window, melting against the warm glass like tiny tears. Ethan sat beside her bed, his large frame hunched forward, elbows on his knees. Noah stood near the window, scrolling through encrypted files on his laptop, tracking the digital trail Preston thought he had buried forever. Lillian blinked tiredly, her breathing shallow but steady. Every moment she stayed awake was a battle, but she fought because for the first time in years, she wasn't fighting alone. "Lil," Ethan said softly, "you need to tell us everything. No more carrying this alone." Lillian swallowed, her voice faint and cracked. "I didn't know how bad it would get. I didn't want you two dragged into something dangerous." Noah turned sharply. "Dangerous? He nearly killed you." She closed her eyes, the memory twisting painfully in her chest. "It started months ago. I found documents in his office. Names, bank transfers, women's shelters, private clinics." Her voice wavered. "I thought he was hiding affairs, but it wasn't that." Ethan leaned in. "Lil, what was it?" She forced herself to speak. "Those women, they weren't mistresses, they were victims." Noah blinked. "Victims?" Her eyes watered. "He paid them to stay silent. Some were pregnant, some had bruises like mine." The room fell into stunned silence. Her hands trembled as she continued. "I confronted him. I told him I couldn't live with it, that I would leave." A tear slid down her cheek. "He said I wasn't leaving, that I was the one thing he controlled perfectly." Noah whispered, horrified. "He kept you isolated for years." Lillian nodded weakly. "He made sure of it. He cut off my friends. Then you too. He said you were a threat to us." She paused, swallowing hard. "And the baby? He wasn't angry because he thought it wasn't his." Her voice cracked. "He was angry because he knew it was his. And he didn't want a son growing up to see what kind of man he truly was." Ethan's fist slammed into the arm of the chair. "I swear to God, Lil, he's going down for this." Noah turned from the window, determination wired into every word. "I've already started. I dug into his offshore accounts. He's laundering money using fake real estate shells. And those payments to Marissa weren't hush money, they were part of the operation." Lillian exhaled shakily. "I knew I wasn't imagining it." Then her expression changed, pain mixed with fear. "There's something else, something I didn't tell the doctor." Ethan sat straighter. "Lil, what is it?" She looked down, ashamed. I tried to leave 3 weeks ago. I packed a bag, I called a cab. But Preston caught me before I reached the door." Noah's heart stopped. "He hurt you then?" She nodded. "He shoved me. Hard. I hit the edge of the staircase. That's where the older bruises came from." Ethan closed his eyes, fighting to keep from exploding. Noah clenched his teeth so tightly his jaw ached. "He told me," Lillian whispered, "that if I ever tried again, he'd make sure no one ever found me." Before either brother could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Ethan straightened, prepared for the worst. But the person who stepped in wasn't Preston. It was Special Agent Claire Donovan, and she looked urgent. "Lillian," she said gently, stepping toward the bed, "I need to inform you of something that changes everything." Noah tensed. "What happened?" Claire glanced at all three of them before speaking. "We just received confirmation from the Bureau. Preston Lockwood attempted to access your medical records tonight. Not the basic ones, the restricted ones. Lillian's breath caught. Ethan leaned forward. Why? What was he looking for? Claire's expression hardened. He was trying to find out if you were going to survive long enough to testify. Noah stepped back as if punched. He's still trying to silence her. Claire nodded grimly. Yes, and that means you're all in danger. She hesitated before adding, and there's more. She handed Noah a sealed envelope. Inside is the identity of the anonymous whistleblower who exposed Preston first. Noah opened it and froze. Ethan looked over his shoulder and went still. Lillian's eyes widened. Because the name on the letter wasn't Marissa Vance. It was someone none of them expected. Someone who shouldn't have been alive. Someone from Lillian's past. Noah stared at the name on the paper as if it were written in fire. His breath stalled in his chest. Ethan's eyes widened with confusion that quickly sharpened into disbelief. Lillian, though weak, lifted her head slightly, her heartbeat audible through the monitor. She managed to whisper, No, that can't be right. Agent Claire Donovan watched their reactions carefully. I take it this name means something to all of you. Noah swallowed, his voice cracking. This isn't possible. Ethan took the letter, reading it a second time even though he already knew every letter by heart. The name on the page was Michael Hayes. Their older brother, the brother they believed died in a roadside explosion in Kandahar 3 years ago. The room fell into a dense silence, the kind that steals air from your lungs. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. Michael, he's alive? Noah shook his head hard, pacing, running a trembling hand through his hair. No, we buried him. We folded the flag. We got the call from his commanding officer. Ethan's jaw clenched. Unless that's not what happened. Agent Donovan stepped forward, lowering her voice. The whistleblower used the name Hayes01. When we traced the digital signature, it matched a classified file belonging to a soldier presumed deceased. The encryption level was military grade. She looked at Ethan. Only someone with high-level access could have submitted what we received. Lillian's voice trembled. But why would he come back now? Why not contact us? Claire sighed. We don't know, but the Bureau believes he's been undercover for years. And not just undercover, embedded in a task force investigating illegal financial networks overseas. Noah froze. Preston's networks. Claire nodded. Exactly. We believe Michael wasn't killed in action. We believe he was pulled into covert intelligence work, and his team discovered Preston's offshore pipeline. Lillian's tears spilled over. So he knew? He knew Preston was dangerous? Claire hesitated. He knew enough to send us evidence. Enough to trigger multiple red flags. Enough to mark Preston as a federal target long before tonight. Ethan suddenly remembered something, an odd letter that arrived 9 months ago. No return address. Just 3 words written in their brother's exact handwriting. Protect Lillian. Now, at the time, they thought it was a cruel prank. Now Ethan felt his knees weaken. Noah whispered, He knew she was in danger before any of us did. Lillian shivered. He tried to warn you. Her voice cracked. And I pushed you both away. Preston said you were trouble. Ethan leaned forward, taking her hand. Lil, none of this is your fault. Preston isolated you, manipulated you. Noah nodded fiercely. Michael knew. That's why he reached out anonymously. He couldn't blow his cover, but he couldn't let you fight alone. Claire added quietly, There's more. Michael didn't just report Preston. He supplied surveillance footage, files, transaction routes. Enough intel to open a federal investigation months before you found those documents in your husband's office. Lillian's eyes widened. Michael's the reason, Preston panicked. Claire nodded. We believe so. Preston knew someone was leaking information, but he didn't know who. He thought it was Marissa, so he tightened control. Then he became paranoid, violent, and he took it out on Lillian, Ethan said, his voice tight with rage. Claire's expression shifted to something even darker. You need to hear one last thing. The Bureau intercepted a message tonight. Preston reached out to someone using an encrypted line he thought we couldn't track. Noah tensed. Who did he contact? Claire looked at them, serious and grave. He contacted a private contractor overseas, someone dangerous, someone with access to military credentials, someone listed as deceased on U.S. records. Ethan froze. No, he whispered. It can't be. Claire finished the sentence for him. Someone using the identity of Michael Hayes. Lillian gasped, clutching her chest. Noah staggered back, his face pale. Preston, Claire continued, is trying to find your brother, and if he finds him first, she let the rest hang in the air. Because the truth hit all three of them at once. Michael wasn't just alive, he was in grave danger. And Preston Lockwood was hunting him. The room felt too small, too tight, as if the walls were inching closer with every beat of the monitor beside Lillian's bed. Ethan, Noah, and Lillian all stared at Agent Claire Donovan, unable to speak, unable to breathe. The idea that Michael, dead for 3 years, was alive was already impossible to process. But now the truth carried a darker weight. Preston Lockwood had found a trail leading to him. Ethan forced air into his lungs. Why would Preston look for Michael? Why now? Claire tucked her hands into her coat pockets. Because someone like Preston reacts one of two ways. When cornered, he runs, or he destroys the person who threatens him. Noah's voice cracked. You think he wants to kill our brother? Claire held his gaze. If Michael has the kind of evidence we suspect, yes. Lillian pressed a trembling hand to her stomach, eyes full of panic. But how did Preston even connect him? Michael never contacted him. Claire paced slowly. We believe Preston intercepted and encrypted communication. It wasn't meant for him, it was meant for the Bureau. She sighed. Michael probably didn't know Preston got hold of it. Ethan's teeth clenched. So now Preston thinks Michael is the informant. Claire nodded. And whoever he reached out to overseas, the contractor has the means to track him down. Noah's chest tightened. We have to find him first. Before Claire could answer, Lillian pushed herself up slightly, grimacing from the pain. There's something you need to know, something I didn't tell you before. Ethan leaned closer immediately. Lil, don't push yourself. She shook her head. No, it matters. It's about Michael. Both brothers froze. Lillian's voice trembled. 3 months before he died, he came to see me. He warned me about Preston. Ethan's breath caught. Noah whispered. What? Lillian blinked slowly, recalling the memory like a faded nightmare. He told me Preston wasn't who he pretended to be. He said Preston had ties to people overseas. Dangerous people. Noah's stomach twisted. And you didn't tell us? Her eyes filled with regret. I tried. But Preston intercepted the message. He threw my phone against the wall. After that, I couldn't reach you. Ethan felt his hands shake. He isolated you so thoroughly. Lillian nodded. Michael said he was working on something big. Something that would expose Preston. He told me to be careful. That if anything happened to him. She paused, breath catching. I was supposed to leave him immediately. Noah pressed a hand over his eyes, overwhelmed. God, Lil. Lillian's tears slipped down her cheeks. But I didn't listen. I was scared. And then Michael's unit, they said he was dead. Claire listened carefully, processing every detail. That means Michael knew about Preston long before the Bureau got involved. She turned to Noah. If Michael reached out to Lillian, he trusted her. That means he might trust you. Noah's eyes snapped open. You think he'll contact me? Claire nodded. You're his brother. And you have the technical skills to track him, Ethan added. And if Preston's men are searching for him, we need to move fast. As the weight of the plan settled over them, a sudden knock on the door made all three jump. Claire moved instantly, hand hovering near her badge. Ethan squared his shoulders, ready for anything. But it wasn't Preston. It was a hospital security guard. Agent Donovan, he said quickly, you need to come with me, now. What happened? Claire asked. The guard hesitated. There's been an incident downstairs. Noah felt dread creep up his spine. Incident? The guard swallowed. Yes, someone smashed one of the security cameras, near the back entrance. Ethan's voice hardened. Who? The guard shook his head. We don't know. But they were wearing a black coat and hat, and they left a message. Claire stepped forward. What kind of message? The guard handed her a small folded note. She opened it as Ethan and Noah leaned over. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. If you're reading this, stay away. You're not ready for the truth. Signed, Lillian gasped. Noah stared at the note, breath trembling. Ethan whispered the words none of them dared to say out loud. Michael is here. The note trembled slightly in Claire Donovan's fingers as everyone in the room stared at it, their minds racing faster than their breaths. Michael Hayes, dead for 3 years, was not only alive, but had just walked through the same building where his sister lay, recovering from an attempted murder. Ethan's fists clenched. Noah felt a strange mix of hope and terror collide in his chest. Lillian pressed a hand over her heart, tears forming again. "He was here," she whispered, barely audible. "He was close." Claire closed the note carefully. "We need to sweep the hospital. If Michael is nearby, he's watching us, tracking what Preston is doing." Noah stepped forward. "If he wanted to talk to us, he would have. That note, it's a warning." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Or he's telling us we're walking into something bigger." Before Claire could respond, her radio crackled. "Agent Donovan, this is security. 2 more cameras were found down near the ambulance exit. Looks like someone disabled them deliberately." Claire answered sharply, "Copy that. Send me the footage from 10 minutes before the systems went offline." "Already on it, but Agent, whoever it was, knew exactly where the blind spots were." Noah breathed out slowly. "Then it definitely was Michael." Lillian's eyes fluttered open wider. Fear mingled with an ache of longing. "Why didn't he come inside? Why didn't he talk to us?" Ethan turned to her gently. "Maybe he can't. Maybe he's being hunted." Claire nodded grimly. "If Preston contacted the contractor we suspect, then Michael is in danger. Serious danger." The room fell quiet, until heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Everyone stiffened. Ethan moved first, positioning himself between the door and Lillian. Noah shut his laptop, sliding it under the bed. Claire's hand hovered near her badge again. The doorknob turned. A security guard stepped in, breathless. Agent Donovan, hospital staff found something else. In the stairwell, he handed her a second note, smaller, more hurried. Claire opened it. This one wasn't a warning. It was a message. "He's coming for all of you. Get her out. Trust no one except blood." No signature. Just the initials. Fear slashed through Lillian's chest. "Preston? He's coming back?" Noah's voice cracked. "Or the contractor he hired?" Ethan stepped forward, voice like iron. "Claire, is there a safe location nearby?" Claire shook her head. "Not in this hospital. If Michael says we need to move her, he's not wrong. He knows what Preston is capable of." A chilling thought struck Noah. If Preston is digging into restricted records, he might know she survived. Claire exhaled sharply. "Which means he'll try again." Lillian's breath trembled. "Where can we go?" Noah immediately responded, "We need a secure facility. Anywhere but here." Claire nodded. "There's a federal safe house in Brooklyn. Not the standard ones. This one's off book. We can move her there, but we need to hurry." Ethan looked down the hall. "How long until transport?" 15 minutes if I call it now." But Noah shook his head violently. 15 minutes is too long. If Michael is warning us, Preston's people could already be inside the building. As if on cue, the lights in the hallway flickered. Just once. Then again. Lillian tensed. No, that's what Preston did at home when he wanted to scare me." Claire grabbed her radio. "Control, status on the power?" Static answered her. "Control, respond." More static. The hospital seemed to inhale. Ethan's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "He's here." Claire straightened. "We move now, right now." Noah unplugged the machines that weren't essential. The nurse rushed in, startled, but Claire flashed her badge. "Federal order. She's being transferred." Lillian tried to sit up, wincing. Ethan steadied her while Noah wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Every second dragged like molasses, but they moved fast enough to outrun fear for the moment. Then, a faint noise drifted from the end of the hallway. A slow, deliberate creak. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Ethan turned, muscles tensing. Claire reached for her weapon. Noah grabbed the bed rail. Lillian's heartbeat soared. Because the silhouette approaching wasn't random. It was tall, broad-shouldered, familiar. Too familiar. Noah whispered, voice shaking. That can't be him." But it was. The man stepping into the dim light wore military boots, a dark jacket, and a face they had missed for 3 years. Michael Hayes. Alive. And looking like he had walked straight out of a war. He lifted a hand. "Ethan, Noah, we don't have much time." His eyes shifted to Lillian, then to the shadow behind him. "Because someone followed me here." For a moment, no one in the hallway breathed. Michael Hayes stood there like a ghost pulled from the ashes, same piercing eyes, same steady posture, but older now, harder, carrying shadows that didn't exist before the explosion they thought took him. Ethan's throat tightened. Noah swallowed painfully. Lillian stared, her trembling hand covering her mouth. "Michael," she whispered. His eyes softened for the first time. "Lil." But the softness vanished instantly as he glanced behind him. "We need to move. Now." Agent Claire Donovan stepped forward, shock flickering across her features before instinct took over. "Michael Hayes, Federal Intelligence?" He shook his head. "Not anymore. I burned that identity months ago." Ethan moved closer. "How are you alive? Why didn't you call us?" Michael glanced past him toward Lillian. "Because the people chasing me would have used you to get to her." His jaw tightened. "They almost did." Noah stepped forward, voice tight with emotion. "We thought you were dead." Michael looked at him, then a look heavy with apology and torment. "I had to stay dead. If Preston knew I survived, he'd hunt all of you." Claire cut in. "He is hunting you." "We intercepted his message tonight." Michael nodded. "I know. That's why I came." Before they could question him further, a chilling sound echoed through the hallway. An elevator ding. Too slow. Too ominous. Michael turned sharply. "Positions. Now." Ethan moved beside him without hesitation, trained muscle memory awakening. Noah instinctively shielded Lillian, helping her back onto the rolling bed. Claire positioned herself defensively, her hand near her sidearm. The elevator doors slid open. Empty. But Michael's voice was low, certain. "He's not using the elevator, he's using the stairs, 2 floors down." Noah blinked. "How do you know?" Michael's jaw tightened. "Because that's what I'd do." Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, heavy, echoing, controlled. Lillian's breath quickened. "Please, please don't let him near me." Ethan whispered, "We won't." "I swear." Michael stepped forward, blocking the hallway. "You 3 take her out the back exit. Claire, lead them." Claire hesitated. "Michael, come with us." He shook his head. "No. If Preston's contractor sees all of us moving together, he'll shoot." Noah's stomach dropped. "So you're just going to face him alone?" Michael looked at him with a quiet steel. "I've survived worse." Lillian reached out, grabbing her brother's sleeve weakly. "Michael, don't." He turned to her, his voice suddenly gentle. "Lil, you survived him too. You're stronger than you know." Ethan's eyes burned. "We're not leaving you." Michael stepped closer. "You have to. You need to protect her and the baby. Preston isn't after me tonight, he's after the last loose end." His eyes flicked to Lillian. Her heartbeat spiked. Noah's breath caught. "Then we're staying." Michael grabbed Noah's shoulder. "No, listen to me." His voice became urgent, low, raw. "Preston has a man with him. A former contractor, the kind that doesn't miss." Ethan's face hardened. "Where is he?" Michael exhaled. "3rd floor, searching for the right room number." "You have minutes." Claire signaled the guard down the hall. "Prep the emergency vehicle." The guard nodded and sprinted off. Michael stepped back, pulling something from his jacket, a small flash drive. He pressed it into Noah's hand. "Everything you need to destroy Preston is on here." Noah's eyes widened. "Michael, if I don't make it, promise me something." Noah shook his head. "Don't say that." Michael's voice dropped. "Promise me you protect her." The contractor's footsteps grew louder, closer. Lillian whispered, "Michael, please, don't go." He gave her a faint smile. "I'll find you again." Then his eyes steeled. "But right now, run." Ethan moved first, gripping the bed rail, pushing Lillian toward the emergency exit. Noah stayed close, one hand on the bed, the other clutching the flash drive. Claire followed, giving one last look at Michael. "Don't do anything reckless." Michael exhaled. Too late for that. They turned the corner. Just as a tall, armed silhouette emerged from the stairwell, the contractor, a man with cold eyes, a suppressed rifle, and a scar that cut across his cheek. He spotted Michael instantly. Michael stepped forward, shoulders squared. "Looking for me?" The man smiled a thin, deadly curve. "I was hoping you'd make this easy." Behind them, Lillian whispered in terror, "Michael." But he didn't turn, because he already knew. Only one of them was walking away tonight. The hallway erupted into chaos the moment the contractor stepped out of the stairwell. His presence filled the air with a cold, lethal stillness. He moved with the precision of someone who had ended lives without hesitation. Michael's stance shifted subtly, shoulders lowered, weight balanced, eyes locked. This wasn't a reunion. This was a battlefield. For Ethan, Noah, Claire, and Lillian, this was survival. "Move," Claire ordered sharply, pushing the bed with Noah while Ethan cleared the path ahead. Lillian clutched the rails, every breath stabbing, her body still too fragile for this kind of terror. Ethan looked back once, just enough to see Michael and the contractor circling each other like two predators. Then the door to the stairwell slammed shut behind them. A gunshot cracked, Lillian screamed. Noah nearly dropped the flash drive. But Claire barked, "Don't stop, keep going." Down the hall, Michael dodged behind a rolling supply cart, the bullet splintering the wall inches from his head. The contractor moved with terrifying efficiency, no hesitation, no wasted motion. "You should have stayed dead," he growled, stepping forward. Michael rolled across the floor, grabbed a metal tray stand, and kicked it toward him, forcing the contractor to step back. "You first," Michael hissed. The man fired again. Michael ducked. The bullet shattered a glass panel, sending shards across the hallway. He grabbed a shard in one swift movement and hurled it at the contractor's hand. The man snarled as it sliced across his knuckles. Michael used the distraction to charge. They collided with brutal force. Fists, elbows, knees. Every strike fueled by 3 years of running, hiding, fighting in the shadows. But the contractor was stronger than Michael expected. He slammed Michael against the wall so hard the drywall cracked. "You think the Bureau can save you?" he spat. "Lockwood pays better." Michael gritted his teeth, blood pooling at the corner of his mouth. "You won't touch my family." He drove his knee into the man's ribs, then twisted free. Meanwhile, Ethan, Noah, and Claire reached the emergency exit door. It was locked with a keypad. Claire punched numbers with trembling speed. "Come on." Behind them, Lillian whispered, breathless. "Michael, he can't do this alone." Noah swallowed hard. "He won't have to, but right now, we get you safe." Ethan glanced over his shoulder. Smoke from a ruptured fire extinguisher filled the corridor behind them. 2 figures struggled inside it. One slammed into the wall. Hard. Ethan didn't know which one. He pushed harder on the bed. "Claire, faster." The lock beeped. The door clicked open. "Go," Claire ordered. They burst into the freezing night air behind the hospital. Snow drifted softly, contradicting the violent storm inside. A black federal SUV screeched up to the curb. 2 agents jumped out, opening the back doors. Lillian was lifted carefully inside, Ethan and Noah flanking her protectively. But Lillian's trembling voice broke through the chaos. "Michael, please. He can't die because of me." Noah grabbed her hand. "He won't," he promised. Inside the hospital, the contractor threw Michael across the floor. Michael hit a medical cart, metal clattering everywhere. The man advanced, rifle raised. "This ends now." Michael spat blood. "Yeah, it does." At the last second, he grabbed a fire alarm switch and yanked it down. A deafening alarm shrieked. Sprinklers blasted ice-cold water from the ceiling. The contractor fired blindly, missing through the sheet of falling water. Michael lunged. They crashed into the flooded hallway in a violent tangle of limbs. Michael fought like a man with nothing left to lose, because he knew if he fell here, Lillian would be next. The contractor pinned Michael's wrist and twisted until his bones nearly snapped. Michael cried out, but didn't stop fighting. He headbutted the man, staggering him. They slipped across the wet tile, grappling. The contractor drew a knife. Michael grabbed the man's arm midair. The blade hovered inches from Michael's throat. Outside, the SUV doors slammed shut. Claire jumped into the passenger seat. Ethan barely got the words out. "What about Michael?" Claire's voice was hard. "We come back for him." The SUV peeled away from the curb. Inside the hospital, Michael let out a raw, desperate roar, twisting the contractor's wrist until the knife clattered across the floor. But the victory was short-lived, because the contractor reached into his coat and pulled out a detonator. Michael's eyes widened. The man smiled darkly. "You didn't think I came alone, did you?" The contractor's grin stretched wider, the small detonator gleaming beneath the flickering emergency lights. Water from the sprinklers streamed down his face, mixing with the blood already dripping from a cut above his brow. "Your family thinks they're safe," he hissed, "but Lockwood plays to win." Michael's heartbeat pounded in his ears. The hallway smelled of wet drywall, metal, and the faint chemical bite of the contractor's explosives. The detonator blinked once red, a silent countdown. Michael lunged forward instinctively, pinning the man's wrist against the floor. The contractor twisted violently, slamming his boot into Michael's ribs. The breath knocked out of him, but he kept his grip. He had no choice. Outside, in the rushing SUV, Lillian clutched the blanket against her chest, shaking uncontrollably. Snow streaked across the windows. Ethan sat beside her, one arm around his sister, trying to steady her trembling breaths. "He's strong," Ethan murmured. "Michael's survived worse." But even he didn't fully believe it. Noah stared ahead blankly, his hands balled into fists. "That detonator," Noah whispered suddenly, realization sinking in. He said, "He didn't come alone." Claire twisted in her seat. "What do you mean?" Noah's eyes widened. "Preston could have planted charges in the hospital. He's desperate." Lillian shut her eyes, tears streaming. No, not with Michael inside." Claire grabbed her radio. "Control? Emergency alert, possible explosive threat on hospital premises." "I repeat, possible." Static swallowed her message. The connection cut. Back inside, the contractor pushed Michael against a metal cabinet, forcing his arm backward. The detonator's blinking quickened, each flash a ticking reminder. "You should have stayed buried," the contractor growled. Michael's breath came ragged. "You're making the same mistake he did," the man snarled. "And what mistake is that?" Michael's eyes hardened. "Underestimating me." With a surge of strength fueled by fear and fury, Michael drove his elbow into the contractor's jaw. The man dropped the detonator. It clattered across the wet tile. Both lunged. Their hands collided midair. Fingers scraped plastic. For a split second, Michael got a grip. The contractor slammed into him, sending both sliding across the soaked floor. The device slipped beneath a crash cart, blinking faster. Outside, the SUV screeched around a corner. Claire barked orders into her phone. "Evacuate the building. Clear all floors." But the hospital's distant sirens didn't respond. Snowfall muted everything. Lillian whispered, "Please, don't let him die. He came back for us." Noah squeezed her hand. "He's not dying. He came back to finish this." Back inside, the contractor reached the detonator first. He smirked. "Goodbye, Hayes." Michael's eyes flashed, not fear, but calculation. The sprinklers had flooded the floor. The wiring of the detonator was exposed. Michael grabbed an emergency defibrillator paddle from a nearby cart. "Goodbye," Michael said. He pressed the paddle to the puddle between them. A violent crack of electricity surged through the water. The contractor screamed as current ripped through his body, convulsing. The detonator shot from his hand, skidding across the floor toward Michael. Smoke rose from the man's jacket. He collapsed, unmoving. Michael collapsed too, gasping for air, body trembling from both adrenaline and the electric aftershock. He reached for the detonator with shaking fingers. The light was seconds from solid red. He ripped open the casing with brute force, tearing wires, smashing the core with the metal paddle until sparks fizzled, then died. The blinking stopped. Silence, except for the sprinklers. And Michael's labored breathing. Outside, Claire's phone finally crackled to life. "Agent Donovan, bomb threat neutralized." "Repeat, threat neutralized." Lillian let out a sob so deep it shook her whole body. Ethan hugged her tight. Noah covered his face, tears burning his eyes. Claire whispered, "Michael did it." Back inside the hospital, Michael slumped against the wall, exhausted, soaked, bleeding, and alive. He reached for his pocket, pulling out a second flash drive. One Preston didn't know existed. He murmured to himself, "Round one's over." Then he forced himself up, limping toward the stairwell. Because he knew Preston Lockwood wasn't running. He was coming, and Michael Hayes would be ready. Snow hammered the windshield as the federal SUV sped across the Brooklyn Bridge, sirens off to avoid detection. The city lights blurred below like streaks of wounded gold. Lillian lay half upright in the back seat, still shaking, still pale. Her hand gripped Noah's so tightly he could feel her pulse racing under her skin. Ethan sat beside her, eyes locked on the window, scanning for any sign they were being followed. Claire Donovan kept her gaze fixed forward. "We have 10 minutes before we reach the safe house," she said. "Stay alert. Lockwood's men aren't subtle, but they're fast. Noah exhaled shakily. Michael needs backup. We can't just leave him there. Claire didn't turn. He's trained for this. If anyone can survive Preston's contractor, it's him. Ethan whispered, but that man had a detonator. He could've. Lillian squeezed his arm weakly. Michael, he promised he'd find us again. Her voice trembled. Noah swallowed hard. He keeps his promises. The SUV turned down a quieter stretch of road. Snow swirled thicker, muting the world into white. Lillian tilted her head back against the seat, exhaling shakily. I want this to end, she whispered. I want him gone. Ethan placed a hand over hers. He will be. But the look in his eyes said he wasn't sure. Miles away, inside the soaked, wrecked hospital hallway, Michael limped through the stairwell. His clothes clung to him with cold water and blood. His jaw throbbed. His ribs ached with every breath, but he moved with the relentless drive of a man who had died before and refused to die again. He descended the stairs slowly, listening for movement. He wasn't alone. A soft click echoed below him. A door closing, a voice whispering. Preston's voice. Michael froze. He's alive, Preston hissed from the lobby. How the hell is he alive? Another voice, one Michael didn't recognize, responded. Your contractor failed. Michael pressed against the wall, listening. That's impossible, Preston snarled. He survived Kandahar. He shouldn't have survived this. Michael's pulse hardened. Preston knew more than he should. The stranger replied, We'll take care of him, but you need to disappear, now. And leave Lillian? Preston snapped. Michael's breaths quickened with fury. Yes, the man said coldly. If you go after her now, the feds will lock you up. We need to clean your tracks first. No, Preston growled. She's not getting away. The stranger's footsteps shifted. You're too emotional. That's why you're sloppy. You want control, but you're losing it. Preston slammed something, a chair, a desk, against the floor. Don't talk to me like I'm one of your men. Michael continued inching down the stairs, sticking to the shadows. But if she exposes anything, Preston began. The stranger interrupted. She can't, because she doesn't know the real secret. Michael froze. Real secret? The man lowered his voice. The baby. Michael's heartbeat slammed. Lockwood, the man said, if that baby survives, you're finished. Everything you built, your offshore operations, the trafficking accusations, the bribery pipelines, they all tie back to that child's paternity. Michael's blood ran cold. Lillian had said Preston wasn't angry because the baby wasn't his. He was angry because it was. But this was something else. What do you mean? Preston demanded. The stranger hesitated. Then, he's not just your son. The embryo procedure, your involvement with Dr. Strauss, they'll trace it all back. You used illegal genetic manipulation to select traits. Male heir, health profile, intelligence markers. If this gets out, you don't just lose your money. You lose your freedom. Michael's stomach twisted. Preston had engineered his own child? The stranger added, if the feds ever learn you experimented without consent on your wife, Michael felt nauseous. That monster. He hurt her, controlled her, and used her body like a tool. Preston whispered. Then we erased them both. Michael didn't wait. He stepped forward into the lobby doorway, voice cold as steel. Not tonight. Preston spun around, eyes wide. You, he breathed. Michael stepped into the light. You'll never touch my sister again. Preston's lips curled into a twisted smile. Then come stop me. Outside the hospital, a black SUV rolled out of a side alley, heading straight toward the safe house path. Claire's SUV. Noah saw the headlights in the mirror. That car. It's following us, Claire muttered. And Lillian, pale and shaking, whispered, it's him. The SUV tailing them kept a precise distance, never too close, never too far. Snow whipped across the road in frantic spirals, the world turning into a tunnel of whitened shadows. Claire's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. Everyone, hold on. This isn't just some random tale. That's a tactical pursuit pattern. Noah twisted in his seat, eyes wide. Preston? Lillian's breath hitched. He's coming. He said he wouldn't stop. Ethan reached across her, gripping her trembling hand. He won't touch you. Not anymore. But even he couldn't hide the fear tightening his jaw. Behind them, the SUV's headlights blinked once. A signal. A challenge. Claire muttered, He knows exactly what he's doing. Miles away, inside the ruined hospital lobby, Michael and Preston circled each other. Rainwater from the sprinklers glistened on the tile, reflecting the emergency lights that flickered like a warning. Preston's eyes were wild rage, desperation, and something colder beneath. "I gave you a chance to stay dead," he hissed. Michael stepped forward. "You took my life, my family, and you still weren't satisfied. Now you want to erase my sister and her child?" Preston's lip curled. "That child was designed to be perfect. Mine, not yours." Michael's blood boiled. "He's not a product, he's a person." Preston sneered. "He's an investment. One I won't let your pathetic family ruin." Michael's stance tightened. "You won't get near them. Not tonight. Not ever." Preston pulled something from his coat. A gun. Michael froze, but only for a second. Then he dove behind the security desk as the first shot exploded through the quiet, shattering a glass panel. Preston snarled, firing again. "You can't save her. She was nothing before me." Michael rolled, grabbed a fallen metal baton from the floor, and flung it across the room. It struck Preston's wrist, knocking the gun sideways. Michael lunged. They crashed onto the floor, grappling violently. Preston clawed, kicked, swung with surprising strength. He fought like a man, cornered by the truth. "She belonged to me," he spat. Michael slammed him against the wall. "She belonged to herself until you broke her." Preston tried to reach for his weapon. Michael grabbed his arm and twisted. A sickening crack echoed. Preston screamed. Then something strange happened. Preston started laughing. Low, raspy, unhinged. "You think you've won? My men are already moving. You'll never get to her in time." Michael's heart lurched. He didn't have minutes. He had seconds. He smashed Preston's head against the tile, knocking him unconscious. Then he grabbed the man's phone from his coat, scrolling rapidly. A message thread. Coordinates. Safe house path. Michael's breath stopped. "They're going after her." Far across the bridge, the SUV chasing Claire's vehicle accelerated. Claire swore under her breath. "He's closing the gap. I'm going to lose him at the next turn." Noah's voice shook. "Can we call backup?" Claire tried her radio, more static. "He's jamming us," she said quietly. He knew this route. Lillian pressed a trembling hand against her belly. "Please, please don't let him take me back." Ethan turned, voice steady despite the terror. "He won't." But then, the SUV behind them swerved, speeding into the oncoming lane. Headlights blazing. Claire shouted, "Hold on." The pursuing vehicle slammed toward their side. Snow exploded upward as tires carved into icy asphalt. Ethan threw himself over Lillian. The impact never came, because Claire jerked the wheel at the last second, sending their SUV skidding sideways into a narrow alleyway, barely scraping past dumpsters and delivery trucks. The pursuing SUV overshot, fishtailing wildly. Noah gasped. Did we lose him?" Claire didn't take her eyes off the road. "Not for long. He'll circle back." Lillian swallowed. "He's not going to stop." Claire finally spoke the truth Ethan and Noah didn't want to hear. "He doesn't want to capture her." Their blood froze. "He wants to kill her before she can testify." The SUV shot through the alley, fishtailing but stable. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. "He wants to kill my baby." Ethan gripped her shoulder. "We're getting you out of this. I swear it." Noah nearly dropped the flash drive in his shaking hands. "Everything we need to destroy Preston is in this. We just need Michael." He froze. A figure stood at the end of the alleyway, silhouetted against the falling snow. Michael Hayes. Alive, bruised, bleeding, standing in their path. Noah gasped. "Michael." Ethan shouted, "Stop the car." Claire slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded, sliding toward Michael, until it stopped inches from him. He stepped forward, chest heaving. "Get her out," he rasped. "They're coming from both sides." And behind him, through the snow, another pair of headlights appeared. Preston wasn't unconscious anymore, and he wasn't alone. Snow roared sideways in the alley as two sets of headlights glared through the whiteout Michael in front of Claire's SUV, and behind him, another car crawling forward like a predator. Ethan shoved the door open. "Michael, get in." But Michael didn't move. His eyes were locked behind him, jaw clenched, breath hard. "He's not alone," he rasped. "There are two men with him, both armed." Lillian whimpered softly. Noah grabbed her hand. We're finishing this tonight. Preston's SUV rolled to a full stop. The driver's door opened slowly. Preston stepped out, coat whipping in the storm wind. His eyes burned with a feverish rage. Behind him, two armed contractors emerged, faces hidden behind black scarves, rifles raised. Preston smiled. You thought you could run forever. Michael stepped into the center of the alley, blocking the line of fire. It ends here, Lockwood. Preston tilted his head. You don't get to decide that. He looked past Michael at Lillian, trembling inside the SUV. She does. Lillian recoiled. Ethan roared, Don't look at her. Preston ignored him. You ruined everything, sweetheart. You were supposed to be perfect, obedient, silent. Michael stepped forward one more inch. And that's why you'll lose. Preston nodded at his men. Kill him. Everything exploded at once. The contractors lifted their rifles. Michael kicked a metal trash bin into the firing line. Noah lunged out of the SUV, grabbing a broken pipe. Claire fired the first shot. Ethan threw himself toward Lillian. Gunfire ripped through the alley. Sparks flew. Snow turned red in the air. Michael tackled one contractor, slamming him into the wall. The man fired wildly upward, bullets shredding a fire escape ladder. Noah swung the pipe into the second contractor's arm, knocking the rifle loose. Ethan tackled him from behind, pinning him in the snow. Preston took cover behind his SUV, shouting, Finish them. Michael disarmed the first contractor with a brutal twist of the wrist. The man collapsed, screaming as Michael shattered his elbow. Ethan punched the second hard enough to knock him unconscious. Then, silence. Only Preston remained, breathing hard, cornered. But he wasn't done. He grabbed the fallen contractor's gun and fired at Michael. The shot slammed into Michael's shoulder. Lillian screamed, Michael. Michael staggered, dropping to one knee, snow soaking quickly with blood. Preston stepped toward him, gun raised, wild triumph in his eyes. You should have stayed dead, Hayes. Now I'll fix it myself. No, it was Lillian. She forced herself out of the SUV, trembling, weak, but standing. No! Ethan reached for her, but she pushed his hands away. Preston turned toward her slowly, smiling viciously. Sweetheart, always so dramatic. Lillian's voice cracked, but it carried through the storm. You hurt me. You hurt my family. You tried to kill our son. Preston lifted the gun. And I'll finish what I started. Click. It jammed. Preston's face twisted with rage. He aimed again. A shot echoed. Preston froze. Blood blossomed across his coat. He dropped the gun and collapsed into the snow. Behind him, Claire Donovan lowered her weapon, her voice steady, firm. Preston Lockwood, you are under federal arrest. He gasped, coughing blood. You can't stop me. Claire stepped closer. You already lost. Preston's eyes rolled back. He fell silent. It was over. Finally over. Lillian collapsed to her knees. Ethan caught her. Noah rushed to Michael, who was barely conscious but alive. Lil, Michael whispered through pain. You're safe. He can't hurt you anymore. Lillian sobbed into Ethan's chest. 3 weeks later, Lillian sat in a warm sunlit room at a rehabilitation center, her newborn son sleeping peacefully in her arms. Ethan and Noah sat beside her, laughing softly. Michael entered with his arm in a sling, smiling through the tired ache. Claire visited often, more than just an agent now. And standing beside the window, a gentle-eyed pediatric surgeon who had cared for Lillian through her recovery, Dr. James Rowan. He touched her shoulder softly. You're healing beautifully, he said warmly. She smiled, truly smiled for the first time in years. A new beginning, a real one. No more fear, no more pain. Only freedom, only family, only love. Lillian whispered to her sleeping son. You're safe now, baby. We all are. So, that's the end of our story. And if you're still here, still listening right now, then something in Lillian's journey must have touched your heart in a very real way. Maybe it reminded you of someone you know. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, even on the days you forget you have any. Life can be cruel. People can be cruel. But like the Stoics said, what stands in the way becomes the way. Every wound you survive becomes part of the armor you wear tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that's the truth. Lillian discovered that even when the world tries to break you, the power to rise again is still yours. If this story gave you courage, healing, or even just a moment of reflection, then stay with us. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story that might speak to your heart exactly when you need it. Thank you, truly, for being here.